In honor of Black History Month, the APL Logistics Diversity and Inclusion Team, in partnership with our African American Employee Resource Group, have created a series to promote an inclusive environment for colleagues to engage. This is a platform for our speakers to share their perspectives on how to change the me into we. Through this series of conversations, we will see individuals share their insights and opinions on important issues and topics impacting the African American community. Welcome back to our series, Changing the Me into We. My name is April Chapman, and I will be co-hosting these videos with our Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Lamont Nelson. We are glad you have all joined us. Today, we will be having a conversation with Dr. Andrew Williams. As for me, I manage internal communications and change here at APL Logistics. I am also the host of the APLL Pulse podcast. Lamont, can you share something about yourself with our viewers and explain what you mean by your theme, Change the Me into We?
Thank you, April. Once again, April, thank you so much for sharing this panel with me. I'm so humbled to be in your presence today. You're doing some awesome things with your podcast, but I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to spending the next few weeks with you on this podcast. And let me take this video taping that we're doing and definitely doing some awesome things to really reach out to the APL employees. A little bit about myself. I'm pretty simple. I golf. I like to listen to jazz. I like to travel. Keep it real simple. You know me, I don't really go too erotic, so I kind of keep it black and white a little bit. But thank you so much for asking me that.
Mm-hmm. You know, before you go on, you mentioned jazz. My dad just visited, and my girls were here, and they're 20 and 17. And they were like doing, having the music going while we were here, and they kept playing jazz, and it my dad's heart exploded because he loves jazz so much. And none of his children ever liked it growing up. And now his grandchildren love it. And he's like, oh, I love this. So anyway, I couldn't let that go. It was just a big deal in our family, jazz. So
great. That's great. Great.
Okay. So tell us, so what do you mean by the theme, Change the Me into We?
I'm glad you asked that, April. I mean, April, have you ever heard of the concept, it takes a village to raise a child?
Oh, I've lived it.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that, well, my thought process, it takes every leader and every employee to create a culture. And what I mean by that, in order for us to get to an employee choice atmosphere, it starts with us. Mm-hmm. We have to get out of the model of always pointing the finger and jerking the thumb. I think if we hold each other accountable, we can end a lot of our D&I challenges, such as communication barriers, less trust, stereotypes, prejudice. And I think it will help improve productivity. So which kind of led me to turn the me into we today.
I like that. Okay, so today, let's turn our attention to our guest. Dr. Williams is going to be joining us. He is the Dean of Engineering and the Lewis S. LeTellier Chair at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. He also is an expert in artificial intelligence and humanoid robotics. He has his PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Kansas and an MBA from Rockhurst University. Thanks for joining us today, Dr. Williams.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Dr. Williams, kind of kick it off. First of all, just thank you for taking out your busy schedule to be with us today. I'm so humbled to be in your presence today. But let's kind of kick it off a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then I'm going to go into my first question.
Yes, as April mentioned, I'm the Dean of Engineering at KU. I was born in Fort Riley, Kansas, grew up the youngest of 6 kids. My dad was in World War II in the Korean War. So he was African-American. He met my mom in Korea. So I used to kind of joke with people, I'm kind of like Tiger Woods.
Okay.
And so I kind of want to be the Tiger Woods of engineering and STEM education.
Okay.
So that's a little bit about myself.
Mm-hmm. Great. My first question to you, we're just coming off Dr. Williams of celebrating the legacy of Dr. King. The question I got for you, how can we continue Dr. King's message of inclusion and equality in our lives today?
That's a great question, Lamont. One of his things that he said was that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? So I believe, like Martin Luther King, you can change our community and the world for the better by looking at how we can do things to help those that are underrepresented, being involved in the lives of those that are undervalued, and including the overlooked. So I have some examples if you want, but that's how I really think we can honor his legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, we can take a few examples if you want. I'm sorry, April, if you want to share.
Okay.
Sure. So one of the reasons why I got involved in technology and becoming a faculty member was in the first .com boom back in the mid 90s and late 90s. I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, a lot of people from the African American community going to Silicon Valley and becoming, instant millionaires because of technology. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to do as I began kind of seeking my, God-given purpose. How can I help, our community? And so I became a faculty member because I want to help train the next generation to be technology leaders and creators and not just users of technology. And so God would have it so that I met Steve Jobs in the cafeteria at Apple. He's the co-founder of Apple. Back when I was working at Spelman College, which is a historically Black college for women. And we struck up a conversation, believe it or not, about the lack of Black engineers at Apple. And he asked me if I had any ideas on how Apple could get more Black engineers. And he said, if I had any, send him an email at sjobs@apple.com. So I was excited about that, went home, told my wife, and thought about it, prayed about it, talked about all the things I thought Apple was doing right, as far as trying to increase their diversity, but also the things that they needed to do from the top down. And he liked it so much that he hired me because he was asking me the question, what can we do? What can Apple do to hire more Black engineers? And so when my technology platform put me in a position where I got to meet him. And so that's one of the things that I'm always trying to see how I can help, our community achieve in engineering and computing, because the salaries and just the trajectory of a family's life who was like low income, first generation family like myself is changed by the opportunity to get an education in computing and technology.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing. And it just goes to show, like, having a conversation, like you had a conversation. And, if you weren't bold enough to have that conversation and to go where you needed, to go with it, think change wouldn't have happened. And so, sometimes we think change is so big and how can I really make a difference? But it's a conversation at a time. And I love that. That was awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I know I'm very moved and impressed that we have Kamala Harris as in our presidential office, because as a woman, I relate to that. I am like, I can see a woman there, and that is exciting to me, but also as African-American. And so she's our first. And so Dr. Williams, we know you've had a couple firsts too. So can you share with our viewers what some of those are?
Yeah, so continue with the Steve Jobs example, he ended up liking my answers so much that he hired me as Apple's first senior engineering diversity manager. So I was the first Black senior engineering diversity manager, not just Black, but just the first one. But also, University of Kansas, I was the first, African American that was born in, domestically to get a PhD in engineering, for sure in electrical engineering, and our history goes back into the 1800s. And so that was in 1999, which it took a long time for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
While I was at Spelman, I founded and led the first all African-American, all female RoboCup team, which you've heard of, the World Cup, soccer, where humans playing humans in soccer. RoboCup is an international competition where robots play robots in soccer autonomously without remote control. So they were some of the Spellbots, which we called them for Spelman Robotics. Those young ladies were some of our modern hidden figures in artificial intelligence and robotics. And AI is hot now, but they were doing that back in the 2000s. And then at University of Kansas, I was the first associate dean for diversity, equity, inclusion, which now you're seeing a lot of DEI positions. And so that was a first. I think Lamont probably is a first at that as well as his company. Mm-hmm. And then now I'm at the Citadel. I'm the first Black dean of engineering And so, I'm never looking for becoming the first. It's just that's the way our world is. Some of my young women that I taught at Spelman, they're the only woman or the only Black woman in the boardroom or in the the high level engineering meetings. And so we're always making history in the African American community.
Wow. Awesome timeline, Dr. Williams. Thank you for sharing. My other question for you, Dr. Williams, what do you think is the most profound moment in African American history today, from your viewpoint or just all the way around, Dr. Williams?
Yeah, I have two parts to that answer. One is definitely when President Barack Obama became president. Absolutely. I mean, that was, once in a lifetime, hopefully not once in a lifetime, but just to see someone, his grandparents, I think, who helped raise him or at least had input in his life are from Kansas too. So that was kind of hit home a little. So that was definitely big. But sadly, the most profound moment from my viewpoint, from a technology standpoint, hasn't happened yet. So I would ask you, who is the most famous Black CEO of a technology firm?
Okay.
And we can't think of one. We can think of Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and the list goes on, but it's hard to think of one. Well, so there is one. I won't give you the answer, but it's not a household name.
We're going to make our viewers go look it out.
Absolutely.
Homework. Go figure it out. I know I will.
No, I'll tell you the answer. As far as I know, one of the best role models in technology was Ursula Burns. She was the CEO of Xerox from 2009 to 2016. So she was the first among Black women to be CEO of a Fortune 5 company. And of course, Xerox was an early technology leader, and she was an engineer. She was also a GEM consortium fellow. So I was in the GEM program. It's a consortium of Fortune 500 companies and top universities that help minorities get masters and PhDs in science and engineering. So I would recommend APL Logistics look into that. It's called the GEM Fellowship or the National GEM Consortium.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, for sharing.
Yeah, we will do that. So we just talked about Black history and some of the people from the past that have been making these big changes, but we're actually right now in the process of creating tomorrow's history, right? So, and I know you're working with students and you're seeing the things that are coming. So what advances would you like to see?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I talked about the students that I worked with at Spelman, did the same thing when I was at Marquette University. We had an all minority team compete in RoboCup, but we also built the humanoid robots that played soccer by themselves. And then when I was associate dean for DEI, we at University of Kansas, we were like 30 miles from Kansas City public school system. And there was 20,000 students. I can't remember, like 63 different languages spoken, but majority minority school district with, almost 50% Hispanic, 37% African-American. And when I first got there at KU, there were none that came from that school district that were studying engineering 30 minutes away. And so these students have great potential. When Lamont asked the question, what would Dr. King do? And I mentioned one of the things is being involved with the undervalued. I think that, we have so many students, Black and brown students that have so much creativity and talent. If given the right mentoring and support, they're going to succeed. So, for example, for me, we were low income We lived in a 2-bedroom trailer. My mom said I slept in a cardboard box. And it was a small, predominantly white church in our neighborhood that, kind of adopted us and were role models. We never saw anyone that went to college, and they did. But if you were to look at me from the outside, you would think, oh, who's this mom walking this little kid, this mixed race kid. To everyone else, I didn't have value, but they saw the value. Look where I am at now. Look at the lives I've impacted. So we really can make history. We can really help by getting involved with, the undervalued and those that are overlooked. Because, our companies need it now. Our economy needs, technology workers. And there's a lot to it, but just getting involved with one can have an impact for, generations to come.
Yes. And I'm just thinking about the fact that everyone has a role to play in it. Whether you are someone who really needs to reach out and, catch that hand and be mentored, or whether, you can be someone who has been in a position of privilege, and what can you do to make a difference? And we can all do something. So I love what you've shared. I think it's inspirational, and I think that people hear it. I think it'll hit their hearts. So thank you. And did you want to share something else?
Yeah, and I just want to just give a shout out to Lamont and you and Thad and Hakan and others that are working on our Ideathon that's coming up. That's going to involve Citadel students and cadets, as well as students from Prairie View A&M University and HBCU in Texas, and potentially Claflin University here in South Carolina. And to me, that's transformational, getting us all to work together. But I think it shows a good example of what's needed. It's a partnership between industry, academia, HBCU, with predominantly white universities. So that's really exciting, and that's actually going to be history making as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we are so looking forward to it.
Yes, we are. We really are.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And for all of our viewers, stay tuned because we have more shows coming this month. So make sure you are tuned in, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye.